Hello and welcome to today's video. Today is a double ink review day. Two inks from Dieman's.Ink. Couple of things. Firstly, I started using Dieman.Ink a number of years ago. I've got a couple and I've had sort of samples and things along the way. And I have to say it's really great to see them becoming adventurous in terms of their colours and the properties of their inks, but also the performance of their inks is improving out of sight. These are both probably the two best, the recent inks I should say. Some of them are the best I've used from the company, and so that is super commendable. A little bit of background. Dieman's Ink is based in Launceston in Tasmania. That's at the north of the island state of Australia. The bottom state there, if you're not familiar, it looks kind of like that, but without the ink splatter all around it. Tasmania is where I was born, and so I'm super supportive of this brand and super happy to see them developing, what they do. One little thing I have to say, and this has kind of bugged me from the start, and I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but when you talk about Van Diemen's Land, and Van Diemen's Land is the original name of Tasmania. It was settled by Dutch settlers, or discovered by Dutch settlers, and they named it Van Diemen's Land. It later became Tasmania after Abel Tasman. Van Diemen's Land is spelt with an E. Van Diemen's Ink is spelt with an A. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but odd choice. Just putting that out there. The two inks I am looking at today, however, one is from the Wilderness series. It is Eucalyptus Regnans. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I am sorry. The second one is from the Underwater series, and it is Twilight Zone. The Underwater series, the Wilderness series representing colours from Tasmania. The Underwater series, a series of highly saturated inks with like sheening properties and things like that. First things first, here are the two inks on a piece of standard cardstock. Just so you know, the ink I have used at the top there is another Van Diemen's ink. It's not one of these two. It is Hailstorm from one of the Seasons sets. The Wilderness series Eucalyptus Regnans green there, beautiful warm dusty eucalyptus green, very nice. Not a bright vibrant green, closer to a field green or maybe like a foresty green, but very nice. Underwater series Twilight Zone there, you can see heavy sheener. It's a very saturated ink. On its like drier portions there where I've really tried to like draw out some of that color, you can see it's a lovely green blue, a dark aqua, dark teal sort of color, which I really enjoy. Double test page here on Tomo River 64 GSM. My apologies. Okay, so just run down each ink and then we can talk about them on other paper. So Eucalyptus Regnans again, low water resistance, but what is left is a sort of an earthier brown. So you do keep some of the detail there, as you can see in that sample. You see on the swab here, lots of shading, those nice browns sort of coming through in the heavy shading there. It's a really pretty, attractive color. Now I had both of these in two pens, a TWSBI with an extra fine, either a Go or an Eco, and a TWSBI with a broad. Once again, either a Eco or a Go. In the extra fine nib, I've said this has lovely shading because when it lays down a wet line, the darker green is beautiful, but the lighter green is actually very nice as well. I've said it is a warm forest green. It's on the lighter side of forest greens, but if you know Australian outback, you know the kind of green we mean here. And said it's good performance. As we'll see on some lower end paper, it actually performs fairly well. In the broad, it's a bolder colour. Still good shade, no sheen. And I said better water resistance than I thought, because you do get a lot of that detail left behind in that sort of brown. The green sort of washes away without getting muddy. Like if we look at the blue there, it moves around a lot because it is so highly saturated. The price of this ink, it comes in two size bottles. I've only got the 30 ml of each, and the bottles look like this, and the 50 ml one being a squarer bottle. It's a bottle that a lot of companies use. It's a sort of a generic bottle, but of course the labels and everything is their own. So the 30ml version of this ink costs in Australia $13.95 Australian. So it's a fairly reasonable price in terms of the cost here in Australia. The 50ml bottle being $19.95. So a well-priced ink. Looking at the chromatography for it, you get a lot of these sort of browny, pinky tones left behind, and lots of this vibrant light green, and then a hint of that blue, which just gives some of that depth. Let's now look at Twilight Zone from the Underwater series. You can see this is that blue-green coming through there, but that sheen is just so present. It's a highly, highly saturated ink, which means that once it is dry and you get it wet, I've used this in terms of other inks as well, it rehydrates. So it moves around, which makes it great for artwork if you want to use it like a watercolor. But if you get water on your writing, it will just sort of like go everywhere. There's a tiny bit of sort of water resistance held behind. Not much really though. In the two pens, the extra fine, it's a nice rich color. There's lots of color there, and even the sheen. I said good flow and good saturation. Not even good saturation, high saturation. It's very, very highly saturated. And the good flow, it feels nice in the pen. Slightly nicer or more kind of lubricated or viscous than the Eucalyptus. In the broad nib, you do see lots of that nice blue. But where the ink pools, you just get massive hits of that sheen. And on Tomo River, you would expect that. So, it's good. I've said here, watch out for cleaning. And the reason I've said that is because these highly, highly saturated inks, some will stain, but they just take a bit more to clean out. So if you're using this in a piston pen, or if you just give a quick clean of a converter or something, you really want to take some time with this, because even a little bit of this ink left behind goes a long way. The price. This is a little more expensive than the Wilderness series, at the 30ml bottle being $15.95 and the 50ml being $24.95. Now these prices are from the Inked Pens website. Inked Pens provided these inks for review, and I'm very grateful to them. So check out the link below to see these inks and the huge range of Van Dieman inks that are available. Let's look at it on some other paper now. So here on Rhodia, getting my papers confused today. On Rhodia, we see once again that lovely earthy green. It all looks very nice. There's no feathering there, which is beautiful. And in Twilight Zone, we see the same thing. Nice performance, hit a sheen. It's good. If we look at the reverse, none of the writing has come through from either. One little spot of the Eucalyptus there came through, and then a little bit from the swabs. But really, I think that performance, even on Rhodia, is fairly good. On the lower end paper, the regular reflex copy paper, we see a little bit of feathering occasionally. Not as much as I have seen from some other inks, so it's okay. It holds together. There's no sheen on the Twilight Zone. It's very much absorbed into this paper. And the colour, therefore, is a little bit more uniform as opposed to showing shading. On the reverse of that, we see it actually has come through. In the finer nibs, it's okay, of course. In the broader nibs, we get a little bit more where it's laying down a little bit more ink. And finally, I have it here on the Spyrex student notepad. This is a student lecture pad, so not fountain pen friendly at all, not designed for it. And here we still see it holds together fairly well. It's not spreading or feathering too much. It's, once again, that uniform colour, which you expect on these papers. And if you look at the reverse, it performs okay. It's certainly not the best performing inks I've used, but I think it does an okay job. And some of that, the finer nibs, again, showing some, usability if you absolutely had to. On this page, I have done some colour comparisons. 2 comparisons for each. So if we look at the Eucalyptus here, I've compared it with Sailor Tokiwa Matsu, which has a bit more sheen in it, and a little bit more, like the lighter shading of the Sailor is a little darker than the Van Dieman, but it's a nice sort of mid-tone green again. And the other ink I've shown it here is Robert Oster Eucalyptus Leaf. And once again, I think there are some similarities there. Van Dieman being a little bit lighter, perhaps a little bit more vibrant, but lacking some of the depth of the Robert Oster as well. In terms of the Twilight Zone, Jacobin Bleu Austral is a fairly close match in terms of the colour. It's a little bit more blue, whereas the Van Dieman is a tiny bit greener in the undertones. And then Dieman Twilight is a bit grayer, more sort of blue-black, but similar in some of those mid shades. But what Twilight Zone has over these two inks, of course, is that sheen. No sheen on either the Heban or the Dieman on this paper, but lots of sheen there on the Twilight Zone. So how have I scored these inks? Well, for a couple of reasons, I've given 3.5 out of 5 to the Eucalyptus. As I said earlier in the video, there's a lot that Van Dieman's ink is doing right. They're really improving, and the formulations are getting better, and the color stay and things like that is getting better and better. This has decent performance and nice shading, so it gets a nice 3.5. A little bit of water resistance there, so not sort of too bad, and a very, very good price. The Twilight Zone, we didn't actually mention the Twilight Zone's chromatography before, like that darker blue grey there at the bottom, and then just all that vibrant blue. But you see how heavily saturated that ink is, how much dye is actually in this ink. I've given this one a 3 out of 5. Now, similar sort of things in terms of the water resistance, shading and all of those kinds of things. I find that heavy saturation of this ink to be not problematic, but in terms of like how it moves around and if you get it wet, things like that. And also cleaning it out of pens just to be a little bit trickier. And that slightly higher price brings this to a 3 out of 5. Once again, okay performance, slower dry time, but if you're a sheen lover, this is the kind of ink you might want to check out. So this was 2 inks from Van Dieman Inks, the Wilderness series Eucalyptus Regnans, and the Underwater series Twilight Blue. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. And, you know, if you've got products you think, if you think I'd like to look at, or if there's a way you'd like to support the channel, get in touch. Let's see what we can do. Once again, a massive shout out and thank you to Inked Pens for providing these inks for review. I hope you found it as interesting as I did. And as I said, if you are looking at wanting to get these inks, check out Inked Pens here in Australia. In the meantime, enjoy your inks, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.